Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Fitter and Faster exclusive, exploring uncharted waters, how to keep your outside training facilities open all year round. I'm Mike Murray. Today, I'm going to be the moderator for our show. We are excited and honored to welcome our guest joining us on the Fitter and Faster exclusive today. We have USA Swimming board member and Nation's Capital CEO, Tom Ugast, USA Olympic team coach and the head coach of the Colorado Stars, Todd Schmitz, head coach of the New Wave Swim Club in Raleigh, North Carolina, John Roy, and the CEO of the Fitter and Faster Swim Camps, David Arluck. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
I think it's important to address immediately while we have these special guests with us. There's a lot happening right now in the world of college swimming. We're all affected by it as club coaches and club owners. I just want to kind of take the pulse of the room and see how you guys are going to handle this news with your athletes and families. Maybe you have some athletes who are affected by this. One of my assistant coaches is a proud alum of Iowa swimming, so it's hit us pretty hard here in Victor. So maybe, Tom, I'll start with you and get your thoughts on what's happening.
It's a little disheartening. I mean, close to home where we are, certainly William and Mary making that announcement of cutting the program after next year. A lot of our athletes look at that school and are recruited by that school, and been a decent program in the Mid-Atlantic. So it's hard for these athletes that work so hard all year round to try to get to college and go and get a academic degree and love swimming and want to continue it, to see these programs cut. In my mind, it's all about dollars and cents for these athletic directors, right? And the presidents, and where are they going to cut their budgets to meet through what we're dealing with now? I don't know that we'd see Iowa and William and Mary, and I'm sure we're going to have some others cut if we weren't dealing with what we're dealing with for the last 7 months. So that's my thought.
Absolutely. Todd, you had mentioned in pre-production that it's the responsibility of a lot of college head coaches to really start to investigate on ways to make sure their program has some sustainability. What are your thoughts on what's happening?
Well, you know what? I think like Tom just said, it's the reality we're in, and we all hope that we're closer to the end than the beginning in this pandemic, but nobody knows. And so the reality is it's going to change the landscape of college swimming. It's going to change the landscape of club swimming. And, David earlier today posted some comments just about it. And it really got me thinking about, I think college coaches and club coaches and as a whole population, we need to start looking at things a little differently and realize that it is our responsibility to understand some of the finances. And if we are a $2 million red line in a college budget, or your club isn't, bringing in what it's putting out, we got to have an understanding of that. Otherwise, you're just asking for trouble. You're asking for somebody to come in and have more information than you. And then all of a sudden there's a conversation that somebody has, maybe it's your AD or somebody, and a meeting goes a lot better when you have the answers. I was meeting with this topic today we're going to talk about. I was meeting with the HOA and the president or the manager, and every question he had, I'd already thought of because I talked to people, and I was like, okay, hey, no, here's our answer for this. We'll put up portable heaters, and I walked out of that meeting just with so much of a better feeling. And I think that we just all need to pull our head out of the sand and start understanding that we are businesses. Even a college swim team that's under William and Mary or University of Iowa. My sister swam at Iowa for 4 years, was a school record holder. She loved every minute of it. She's brokenhearted now, but that's the reality we're in. We gotta be aware of those things. And I think it's more than just, you hear alumni engagement. For sure, I think alumni engagement, but I think it's a lot of other things, like understanding what it truly costs to have your program in a pool or run a pool, or all those things that swim coaches sometimes don't want to think about, because we're like, well, we're swim coaches. Well, that's not necessarily the reality we're in right now.
Right. And John, you have so much experience across USA Swimming Board of Directors and been on a lot of different boards in our sport and played a lot of different roles in our community over a long time. This has always been an issue for us But what are some of the things that COVID's changing about it that's putting us under the gun for getting this situation to a point where we have some solutions?
You know, COVID and the number of programs that are being dropped, obviously, it's affecting the entire swimming community. You know, having spent time on the board of directors, we know how important the collegiate program is to developing our Olympic team, you know, our future stars, our stars of now. I had a call this afternoon on Zoom with a family who their child's looking at college, and now I have to really work with them to, you know, I think you should really ask how stable is your program. And to go a little bit to what Todd was saying, you know, you look at programs that have been dropped like ECU. I know the fundraising effort to reinstate the East Carolina program has been huge, and the commitments have been huge. Well, it's too late. The decision's been made. I think our college coaches, like Todd said, need to realize they're a business, engage the alumni now, do the fundraising, endow their scholarships, and have funds for their program, so that making the decision to cut the programs that much harder. I think they also need to sell the value of a swimming and diving program to the university, the quality of kids that are coming there. You know, you look at a university like William and Mary, which is a fairly expensive university in our country. And, you know, they have how many kids on campus, a good number of them paying full tuition. And some of the other values that a swimming and diving program bring to that university, as opposed to just being that red line on a budget sheet.
Sure. And Dave, you and I have talked about this a lot the last few days. You have incredible business sense. What is your take on what's happening, and maybe some of the advice that you have for college coaches and administrators?
Well, I think that it's important to have some perspective. You know, right now is a hard time for businesses across all industries and people of all backgrounds and walks of life. So when it's you being affected, it's very easy for you to feel sorry for yourself or feel like the world's coming down. But we're not the only ones being affected by, you know, the COVID environment. You know, there is going to be some fallout. You know, we've seen some college programs that are iconic getting cut recently. I always mentioned William and Mary just yesterday was announced. And then of course, Dartmouth has been cut back. And there's a lot of strain and stress on other programs out there because they might be feeling the pressure to perform and to hit certain metrics that their university has put out there. But the important thing, and John kind of alluded to it, and Todd did as well, is to communicate. You know, what is it that's important to the administration? What are the benchmarks that they would like to see, both financially and from an academic standpoint, and also from a performance, an athletic performance standpoint, and to perform and to communicate very, very high. You know, when I hear about a swim program with a $2 million budget in this day and age, that's a lot of money. And if you're not driving $2 million in revenue or more, you know, you shouldn't be too surprised if that's what's going to happen to you. And you know, in any business, frankly, it's not just true for swimming. It's true for any business. If you're $2 million in the red, you're not gonna live a long, prosperous life. So I think the day and age of college sports that aren't generating any revenue or have too much of a deficit is over. And I do have a high level of confidence that in 5 years, there will be just as many or more college programs out there across Division 1, 2, and 3. I just think that the programs are going to reinvent themselves over the next 2 years. I believe that college coaches with a business sense will begin to emerge. I think there are coaches in college right now who will acquire some new skills and hire new people to their staffs. You know, maybe they'll hire some volunteer assistants from the MBA program at the university to help them learn how to monetize their program. They'll work with the business and the business programs to get things going. But you got to think different. I don't think now is a time for swimming, college swimming, to be acting like a victim. One of the very first activities that families do together with their young kids is learn to swim programs, mommy and me programs. They're taking the kids to swim. They take the kids to pools. You know, this is an activity of a lifetime. You know, that's just a fact. But I think that there's a lot of people around who think that swimming is a non-revenue generating sport, and they use that as a crutch, or that it's a not-for-profit sport and they use that as a crutch, and that's just not gonna work anymore. So we got to be aggressive. We got to communicate. We got to learn what's important to the administration who are making these decisions. If your job is at a university is to figure out how to save money at a time when they're losing tens of millions of dollars, and you come across a line item that's red at $2 million, $1.5 million, you know, that's not a situation you want to find yourself in. So I think that we need to be asking ourselves the hard questions. Am I spending too much money? Do I need to be taking this many travel chips? Do I need to be spending this much money on my staff? Do I need to be making this much money? I know I've asked myself that in the past. There was a period of time, you know, deep in, you know, probably 5-6 years into my company, I didn't pull a salary for 5-6 months because I wanted to survive. You know, during the COVID pandemic, I didn't pull a salary for a couple months because I wanted to survive. And you got to do what you got to do to make things happen. And you got to ask yourself the hard questions. And I believe that the coaches out there will do it. And college swimming will find itself in a nice, strong position in the future.
Well, that's great initial conversations on that, and we could do a 2-hour show on that.
Sorry.
It's great feedback, and I know how passionate you are about that, and I'm glad that we had a chance to address it, because as many of us are home and we're scrolling through our phones and we're watching week after week something like this happen, I think, you know, it was the elephant in the room, and I wanted to talk about it. But now we get to jump into the uncharted waters. Gentlemen, this morning it was 55 degrees in the pool deck outside here in Rochester, New York. I'm going to be staring down the barrel of a whole bunch of weeks like that outside. The two most important questions facing coaches and team administrators right now are, my indoor facilities are closed or at a limited capacity. How can I continue to offer programming? And what options are available to my team that I have not yet considered? Now, talking to Todd Schmitz today, it's supposed to snow in Colorado in a couple days. Todd, what are the plans for the Colorado Stars?
I got to be on Monday morning. It was 46 degrees when my kids hopped in the water at 5:10 a.m. at our 50-meter outdoor pool. And yeah, like you said, it'll be 90 tomorrow, Sunday and Monday, and then it's going to be 35 and snow on Tuesday. But we're, you know, the same thing here. Our main facilities that affect probably about a half a dozen teams is public schools, and they're not open. I spoke directly to the district AD the other day, and he just kind of said, well, we're hoping second semester, which would be January. But then he said, even then, we're going to be under a lot of number restrictions. So when their high school season, girls starts right when they open back up in January. Boys season starts sometime end of March, which those have all shifted. He said, you know, here's the reality, Todd. We're only going to be able to have varsity and then JV. Like, they have to be separate. They have to leave the building. Even meets, we have to have like just a JV meet, and then we have to have a varsity meet, and they can't be together because we run in. And I was like, okay. So he's like, basically what I'm telling you is that even when we open, there's not going to be very much pool time like you've had in the past. And so the last couple of weeks, just kind of getting the wheels rolling. And we have all of our neighborhoods around here have pools. And so we're pretty far along, and we're pretty confident that we're going to get an outdoor 8-lane, 25-meter facility. And our plan is to keep it open all winter. A team north of us in Fort Collins, Colorado, did it a few winters ago. And their heating bill, they didn't pull covers. Their heating bill was upwards of almost $400 a day in November and December.
So, Todd, when you say all winter long, I already know the answer to this, but what month will you conclude your outdoor training?
Well, probably it'll roll back in, run into next summer. I mean, May, probably the middle of May, we'd have to relinquish the pool back to the HOA, the homeowners association, and then we would just roll into our summer plan, continue using there, and our outdoor 50-meter would be open. But like I said, this is my business, this is my livelihood, and a long time ago, a lot of people around me were like, yeah, well, we got pool time through October and all those things. And I was like, yeah, but what are you going to do in November? And everybody's like, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, I'll let you guys worry about that. But like, I'm going to worry about November, December, January, February. And so, yeah, just started the conversation. And the one thing I've learned this summer is a lot of people that I thought would say no, they actually were like, well, what do you mean? And then actually we ended up renting 3 different HOA pools. So we all know how dealing with 3 boards, it's not always easy getting it done. But yeah, it's worked out really well for us. And we just had a team Zoom about it the other night. So
You know how much I admire what you're doing, man? It's going to snow next week. And I bet your whole team is rallying around the opportunity to continue swimming all winter long. And they're doing it because they love it.
Yep.
And you created that situation by talking to a lot of people. I mean, obviously, you're not going to make nearly as much money as you were, but the name of the game right now is just seeing it to the end, right? It's making that connection.
You know what? And it's similar to what Fitter and Faster. You know what? There was a point that nobody could be in the water for a clinic or anything like that, and so you adapt. And I think my whole point of this thing is that I want to make sure that I told my team since like the first meeting in April, Stars is going to make it through this. There's going to be a lot of teams that aren't going to make it through this, but I said I'm going to commit to you that right now Stars is going to make it through this, and we'll be better on the other end. And but yeah, it's a challenge on a daily basis right now.
Yeah, but so, and I may have missed it. Was that pool heated? That you put in the heater, right?
No, so it's heated right now, but they have an old heater. It's actually 15 years old. So that's the part of our proposal to them right now is that we're going to put in a better. They have an old school dinosaur heater that's not high efficient. So that's part of our deal is that we're going to go in and say, hey, we're going to put this $30,000 heater in for you, and we'll fund it up front. But also, like, this is what you're going to save. You're going to save 50% a month on your heating bills next summer. So it's probably, we're talking somewhere around $3,000 a summer that they're going to save by putting in this better heater. So yeah, we're trying to think of all the upside to get it in there.
So the deal that you do with them, are you going to have that pool for just this upcoming year? Or do you get now, because you're doing this, are you going to get rights on that pool for a few years to come?
Right now, just the deal is through the winter, but you know what? It's an awesome location. The pool is actually right outside of the neighborhood, so it's crazy. Like the houses that sit right by the pool are not even members of the pool. So it's a great dynamic instead of sitting right in somebody's backyard. But I definitely look at this as a long-term relationship. It's an 8-lane, 25-meter pool. It's 3 to 5 feet, but you know what? I don't care. 3 feet's challenging for the older kids, but if we start on the 5-foot end, and they'll make it work. So
that's actually a great segue. And David, I'm glad you mentioned that, because in doing research for this, I was talking to John a little bit, and he sent me a bunch of great content and some of the ideas that he's run with. John, you've actually researched how to connect to the city's water, how to connect your pool to heating elements. You've done all of the background work on that. Can you talk a little bit about how you created that opportunity for your club?
Well, it wasn't COVID, but we had a facility situation, and we lost a facility, and they started their own team. And I went to my membership and said, is it worth pursuing another facility to train at in this area? Or are you just all going to go with the new team? And I had enough families say they wanted to be with us that I went out, I found a summer league pool It's not in a neighborhood. It doesn't have an HOA, but it does have a board. And knew that we were the plan was to fundraise and get a tent or bubble type structure for it. But we knew that that was going to take some time, and that at the very least, the first year we were going to be outside. We put it, knowing this was a long-term project, and if a heater goes down, if a heater goes down, we're out. We actually put 2 heaters on the pool, so if one goes down, they are strong enough that we can maintain. If it got real cold, I might not be able to maintain real well on one, but at least it's not going to go down to 65 degrees in the pool. And so we put 2 heaters on the pool. In the process of, okay, how do we get the gas back to where the heaters are behind the pool, behind the pump house? Called the gas company and said, hey, I want to put these heaters in, but I need a gas line back there. Well, what kind of heaters? And they're a couple 400,000 BTU heaters, and they saw and guessed what my gas bill might be over the course of winter. So the gas company brought us a gas line for free, which was all the way around the pool and back behind the pump house, and pretty good ways that if I'd had to pay for that, it would have been fairly expensive. But talk to the gas company. One of the things we did is worked with the town the pool's in, and we separated water from the bathroom facilities and water to the pool, because when you're paying your water bill, you're paying for sewer as well, but the water that's going in the pool isn't going down the sewer. And so we've reduced our cost on filling the pool, things along those lines. One of the best things that I probably did, and Todd was talking about, hopefully it's a long-term, is we set up a long-term contract with this pool. And then a couple summers ago, they had to resurface the pool. They wanted to expand the fence, and they needed to redo the deck. And under the terms of the lease and contract we'd set up, our percentage as a team on that was prorated because the pool surface was already needing to be done when we came in. They asked me if I'd do more than we were required to help them so that it could get done. I said, sure, as long as we extend the lease for the livelihood of the pool surface. So I have a lease with this facility until 2034.
So you got that water locked up. That's
yeah.
so cool.
And I really am hoping that I have a lease really with this facility for the future of the team, even when I'm not with the team. And it's favorable to both of us. And Todd said, he asked. I think if you find facilities where your presence, bringing in a heater, bringing in covers, bringing in more membership, I think if you find a facility that where you're a benefit to them and they're a benefit to you, and you create a partnership, I think that's really how I feel about our relationship. Is it is a partnership, and sometimes there's a little disagreement here and there, and we have to go back to the lease agreement says this, but when they asked for more, I said sure, just extend the lease a little bit, and we were in a position to be able to do that, and it benefits us in the long term.
Absolutely. And Tom, with so many sites and so many athletes at NCAP, what is the immediate strategy for you guys?
Immediate strategy for us has been to find summer league pools in the area that are heated, that are willing to work with us. We have kids on them, other clubs have teams on them, and it's been great working with some of these that are interested in trying to stay open longer so that we can keep these kids swimming. I was just looking at those numbers before we did this call, 1,650 athletes on our team across 10 sites. And right now we have 4 sites that aren't going to be in the college or university they're in, or a private school. So I'm trying to make sure I've got outdoor swimming for about 400 kids for as long as I can. A lot of these summer league clubs, they don't have winterized bathhouses. So I've got to overcome that. I'm looking up to call and talk to tent companies where I'll put tents on the deck with side coverings and an electric heater like you'd see at not as big as what you'd have at a wedding, but just a simple tent where we can put the covers down, let the girls go in, warm up, dry off, get out of there, and let the boys go in and do the same thing so that we have a place for them to get warm when it does get cold. But I've had very good success. I've got 3 pools in Northern Virginia that we're talking to, 3 in Montgomery County. So I feel comfortable. And I lost the college one last night. I had to find, as of last night, I had to find a place for 100 kids to be able to swim. So we're having a big meeting with my coaching staff on Sunday just to go over, all right, here are all the pools we have. What are we going to do? Where are we going to put the kids so we can keep them in the water and get them started back up? Because they've been off this week, started school. But we've got a ways to go. I mean, this is new for us. I want to be on this call so I can learn from John, because I know John's been doing it for years. But I'm looking at getting covers for these pools, the tents, and do whatever we can to make sure that we can stay in the water as long as we can.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm thinking of long term as Todd through May, depending on what this weather gets like here. And I'm hoping, it must be because I'm in DC and I hear all the politicians every day, you know, we're gonna have a vaccine by November, right?
Yeah. But what does that even mean? You know, what does
that mean? But we're going to keep them in as long as we can. I know you have it on there, but you know, I'm considering, we're talking to the coaches, you know, the 9 and 10-year-olds, do they go out after Thanksgiving if it's too cold and take a longer time off? Every day is different, Michael. I don't know about you. John's been doing this too long, but for us up here with that many kids, I'm looking at it week by week. What do we have to do to make sure we can keep these kids swimming? We've put together a curriculum because because of our restrictions on lanes, I've had to take at least one water practice session away from every group. So we're going to be doing
that was going to be a question for all of you guys, because the one question I'm getting is, well, Coach Mike, how are you deciding who swims when and who gets more pool time, right? So I want to pitch that to you guys. How are you handling that piece of the communication? And then I want to pitch it back to John to get some information on how do you communicate to your parents that it's February and we're training outside? And that's a question Todd's going to have to put out there too. But so first, John, for you, how do you communicate to these families who gets to swim, when, and how? And for Tom, that's got to be an absolute logistical nightmare. You know, for me, 200 athletes, a little bit easier, but I'm interested to see how you've been communicating with your families on that.
So when we first started back in the water, we were in phase 1, which allowed us to go groups of 9 athletes with a coach because everything was restricted to 10 people. Yeah. We were going like, it didn't matter what group, 30 minutes of dry land, 30 minutes in the water. And then our older kids and top age groupers would do 30 minutes of dry land afterwards. That fortunately only lasted for 2 weeks. And once we hit phase 2, our restrictions were a little bit better in terms of number of people per square foot of surface area and things. We've been able to do 5 kids per lane, which has allowed us to be fairly close to our normal training schedule. We start our official new season on Tuesday, and for the most part, we are going with a normal schedule. Our city facility is still restricted to 2 per lane, which just, it doesn't meet my budget very well. Even though the city has done a good job of making it cost effective, the coaching and scheduling is too demanding to make it work. So we've gone and gone to another summer league pool, and we are renting a 6-lane, 25-yard summer league pool to add additional lane space to cover those kids. We're moving our senior group from the city site to our high school site, and they're going to train 5 o'clock every morning before school. And a lot of our options are not always ideal, but it's the best we can do right now. I think that's been our number one goal, is how do we accommodate all of our athletes throughout the program in the best possible manner? And I think the feedback I've gotten from our membership is, one, we've been very open and honest. When we knew we had to move the city pool kids around, we got on Zoom with each of the group levels and said, does this work for you? And actually had dialogue and communication with them. We just didn't say, this is what we're doing. We worked with them, and we told them there's not going to be a solution that works for everybody. We're looking for the solution that works for the most people.
Right. And Tom, you're the communication at NCAP with so many different age group levels, so many different sites. How are you handling the coordination of that?
So, what we tried to handle during the summer, Michael, and we cross over 4 different counties, right? Virginia was a little bit less restrictive than Maryland. So I had to try to break it up. And what we did in Montgomery County for the whole summer, we were 1 swimmer per lane. Luckily, we rent one big 10-lane, 50-meter pool that we broke up into 20 short course lanes by putting a lane rope across the middle of the pool. So the kids only had one wall to turn on, but we got 20 kids in an hour. So, and we rented it from 6 a.m. in the morning till 11:30 in the morning when they opened up. We had exclusive use of it, and we got 120 kids through there a day. Last week, we got the county health department to relent and let us go 4 per lane if you are a USA Swimming competitive team. We showed them everything that we put out through USA Swimming. We put together our SOPs, and we finally got on the rent and say, okay, you're a USA sanctioned swimming team, you can go 4 per lane. So that's helped us tremendously as we get ready for the fall. But the communication, as John said, is key. I would send out and David can tell this because his son swims for our team. Every 2 weeks, I send out a CEO letter, just saying where we are, what we're doing, what we're trying to do. And I think probably across every letter I sent out, I made sure the parents understood this season is not going to be the same as regular. We can't do it, but we are going to keep these kids swimming. We are going to do the best job we can. And I think the one thing I went through all the coaches, and I know Bruce Gemmell didn't like it, Tim Kelly didn't like it, John Flanagan didn't like it, but I said, you got to cut out 1 water workout because that's the only way we're going to fit everybody in, all the way down, from seniors down to age groupers. And as long as we can be fair about it and do it across the board, I get a couple that, emails from parents that don't think it, don't understand it and why we're doing fair. And I just got to go back to them and say, we're trying to be as fair and trying to keep as many kids in the water as we possibly can. And I think all of us on this call, that's what we're trying to do, right? And keep these kids doing the activity that they love to do, because they're not getting any activity sitting in front of their CRT for 6 hours a day. I don't get what these county school systems think they're doing.
Right. I think one of the things that's really important and that David has noticed with us at Fitter and Faster and some of the other coaches that I've talked to is we're working with smaller groups. So I'm actually making some great connections with kids that ordinarily I might not get to. So that new model is different for a lot of us, but I think it's making an impact. And we're finding out at Fitter and Faster that the participants are getting a lot more out of the smaller groups also.
Well, I think we're all going to be race pace before it's over. Michael Andrew had something going, I think.
One of the things, guys, that we talked about was, how do you communicate, John, that first time where you were telling the parents that the kids were going to be outside all winter or training outside for a longer period of time? How did the parents take that initial communication?
Well, when we first started, it was, we're going to need to do this until we get a bubble, a tent. We were going to fundraise for it. So there was always the bubbles coming sort of thought process. We got one. Everybody hated it. Told me to sell it. They preferred the fresh air. And coaches know this, but I get in my car every day after practice and I don't smell like chlorine. I don't care what facility you're in. I don't care how great the air quality is. It's not outside and it's not fresh air. And with COVID, being outside and fresh air is even better. I mean, we're turning people away right now. Our outdoor facility of our 3 facilities has been our largest facility for the last 5 years in terms of numbers. So we sold our tent that we bought and swim outside. I think the first year we were out there, okay, here comes the first day that it's going to be really, really cold. It was going to be, I think the high that day was scheduled to be 40, which for Raleigh, North Carolina, that's pretty cold. It's not in Rochester, New York, and but that's fairly cold for us for a high temperature. And so had the brilliant idea of, and it's stuck. We have a policy. if the temperature at the end of practice is below 45 degrees, you know, I went through all our hospitality stuff and got our big coffee pots and sent somebody to Costco and got a ton of hot chocolate and little cups. And so if it's below 45 degrees when your practice ends, your recovery beverage is hot chocolate, you know. Because I didn't want, now the kids want it to be cold because they get hot chocolate after practice, and we've been doing that for years. We swim every level. We swim our beginning competitive group, our 6-7-year-olds, our maybe even a 5-year-old. We do keep the pool at 82 degrees, and we're able to do that. Our weather is good enough that it doesn't kill my gas bill, but we keep it at 82 degrees. Which, if you really think about it, now these little kids, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, are in 82 degree water for their 45-minute or an hour-long practice, whereas they used to be in 80 or 78 degree water at some of the other facilities we're using, and they're cold in the water. Well, they're fine in the water. There's a pavilion, it's big enough to have like 6 big picnic tables under, and we wrap that with like tent siding, and put those mushroom heaters, like propane mushroom heaters you might see on like a restaurant patio or something like that. We put 4 heaters in there, so there's a warm area. And we did finally eventually add heaters to our locker rooms, things along those lines. The next project I want to do is put in a tankless water heater, so that once this COVID is gone and they can go back and take showers and be in the locker room together, that we're not running out of hot water. But you know, there's steps to take, and I think wrapping the pavilion, the hot chocolate when it's cold, a lot of those things that I've learned along the way have made it enjoyable. They want it, you know.
It's an experience.
You know, we've had huge snowball fights on our pool deck, you know, just huge snowball fights. And you know, we have a standard policy, and we don't do this with the younger kids, but our top age group and our pre-senior and our senior kids, if there's snow on the starting blocks, we have to dive at 25 at least that day. And you know, and we used to take the hot water and get the snow off. Now they want to dive from the snow. So, you know, it's all about how you approach it and how you look at it and
how you sell it.
It's what we do. And we sell the fresh air. Like, even when we go to meets, our kids I feel like we're a Florida team. You know, you see the Florida teams at like juniors or whatever, and their kids are having a hard time in the facility breathing. And you know, that's sort of become us from that one site, is that you can definitely feel it. So I sell the fresh air all the time. You know, the 82 degree pool for the younger kids, they're warm the whole time they swim. My older kids, they can self-regulate. They stand up, you know, they cool off in between swims if they need to, so that they're not overheating at 82 and the younger kids are warmer.
Sure. And when we're talking about keeping water at 82, and we talked a little bit about this before we jumped on live, it's gonna affect our budget, right? We're thinking about, this sounds great, I want to be outside, all this stuff is wonderful. How's it going to affect my bottom line? And one of the things that we have to think about is keeping that water warm, and how do we insulate the pools overnight? And Todd, I know you were talking about it. What are your plans to cover the pool at night to keep that water insulated?
Well, we're going to get some thermal blankets. You know, it's not the solar blankets, the bubbles, the blue bubbles you've seen that, you know, you'll see in a residential pool that I grew up with in our pool in our backyard. They're like thick blankets, and they're heavy. But we're going to pull them. You know, a team here right up the road from us has an outdoor that they bubbled pool. And he said, even with the bubble, he said, if they don't cover their pools, their heat bill's 30% higher. And, you know, so 30%, you know, a team in Fort Collins, you know, like I said, upwards of $400 a day in gas. And so we're talking a substantial amount of money in December, January, February. And so all of a sudden that $6,000-7,000 investment is going to probably make some sense.
Absolutely. And, you know, Tom, from a CEO standpoint of a major team with so many locations, what are your first few financial considerations as teams make a jump like this?
Looking at your pool rental budget, and can you stretch that with what you need to do outside, what you do inside? And, you know, if not, how long can you be in the red. We got to keep these kids in the water, and we all know there is going to be the end of this. We're not going to be living in this pandemic forever, but figuring out with everything that's gone on over the last 7 months, certainly the only way that's helped me, knock on wood, survive is PPP, right? Got me through 3 months that helped me save money, but I'm going to be spending that over the
Right
next
now.
3 or 4 months to keep these kids going.
Yep.
So looking at the big picture, I've set in my mind with my guys that I work with on my books is I'm going to look at 2020 and 2021 as one season. How are we going to bridge those two together so that we at least break even to get through this? Use some of the money that we didn't have to spend because we didn't have meets or we didn't have something else happen during the summer, that I was able to save some money, pool rents that I saved during the summer, and just move that over to this new season.
Mike, on my rough estimate, I think in November, December, when it starts getting really cold here, I think my pool rent's probably going to be 3 times what, that's including utilities and everything, because we're going to be running the pool 3 times what it normally would be.
Right. And
Yeah,
John, you go ahead.
Sorry, Mike. I'll tell you, Todd, if you get those thick blankets that are blue on one side, black on the other, you guys get plenty of sunshine. I always go black side up, and you'd be surprised at the difference it makes. There's every time I pull those covers, there's a nice warm layer under. I don't, they always show them blue side up, and I'm like, why wouldn't I put the black side up and take advantage of the sun?
More sun. Yeah.
Right? Even when it's 35 degrees out and I pull those covers off, there's still an extra warm layer because I go black side up with my thermal blankets.
Like it.
If you're looking for an inexpensive solution and you want to, go get the black thick plastic, the thick mill plastic from like Home Depot for gardening, and use the black so that you can take advantage of some of that solar heating.
Right. And Mike, I'm gonna have to do some testing because unlike maybe Todd and John, I'm gonna be at 4 pools. So what do I put on all 4 pools to keep that heat in? Luckily, the one country club we use is a 50-meter pool that we've been at for 20 years. They do have the heavy duty covers. We're going to have them on all the time. And then we'll pull them to the side when we're going in and training. The other ones, the community pools, we're going to buy the covers. And I've already, as I told you on offline, I've already gone to Amazon and gotten the thick bubble that we're going to test out. If that works, I'll get more of it, or do what we need to do to try to reduce that utility cost that we're going to have. I think we're right in the middle between what John experiences and what Todd's going to experience, right? But I just wrote down a note for myself, wrapping the pavilions, all these community pools, they have a pavilion instead of maybe getting the tents. Wrap that pavilion and then put a heater in there. Get those.
We've got tents from our meets where we had all these sides to these tents, and there's wood posts. I just staple them up to the pavilion and wrap it up.
I'll go to those clubs and say we want to do that. That way we have a warm area for the kids and put those heaters, those gas propane heaters in there. Turn them on, 5 minutes before they finish.
They're a couple $100.
Yeah,
they're a couple $100, and we go through a propane canister in them in 3 or 4 days usually, depending on how cold it is. But the propane cost is insignificant in the big picture.
Right.
One of the things that I wanted to ask David, because he's one of the best in the world at this, and this is more of a philosophical question, is David, how does an organization, when it's hit with challenges like this, pivot and then come up with action items to deal with it?
Well, I'm just getting so much pleasure listening to John, Todd, and Tom talk about their plans. There's certain people in this world that you can give any problem to related to their business, and they're just going to figure it out. They may not know much about heating pools at the beginning of, or even operating at some point, but they're going to figure it out. They're going to learn what they need to learn, and they're going to figure it out. And in any industry, there's also going to be people who just can't figure shit out. And and that's just the way the world works. And you're seeing, you saw John, for example, a couple of years back, he was presented with some obstacles. He came up with a solution that was innovative in Raleigh, North Carolina, and now he's made it his own. Now it's not even a problem that he continues to service. It's the flavor of his program, and he's serving hot chocolate. They're having snowball fights, and it's part of the culture that he's established. And I feel like,
I think Ed Lauer was serving the hot chocolate, though. I don't know how he's going to do that this year.
Speaking of Iowa alums.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there are, teams in this crazy environment that we're all living in right now who are just rising to the occasion and owning it, and not dwelling on this is the unfortunate circumstance that we're dealing with and using it as a crutch, but they're using it as a way to rally their staff and bring them together. Hey, here's a hard decision I had to make. Tom says to, Bruce Gemmell and a number of other coaches, we're gonna have to cut back on one of the practices. But you know what? At the end of the day, the whole team comes together and they understand it, and the parents come together and they understand it. And Todd's doing the same thing with his program. So when you're talking about pivoting and everything else, you're seeing it live in action, and that's one of the reasons why I had originally called you last week. And I'm like, hey, we need to get, these guys on a call just to hear them talk about what they're doing, because I feel like they are the example by which so many hundreds of other teams can follow to and model and figure it out along the way. And the same thing goes for college swimming too. I mean, in college swimming, the thing that gives me hope for the future in both college swimming and with what we're going through right now in COVID in club swimming is people like these guys on the phone, on this Zoom here, who are just owning it, understanding what the issues are and dealing with it. And we may not like what we're doing. We don't like cutting back on the practices. We don't like doing this, that, and the other thing, having to swim outside when it's 30 degrees outside, but we're doing what we have to do to make it work. And that's why we will have a strong future in this sport.
Yeah. I think back on this, David, all the time, and John and Todd will remember this, but the summer of 2012, when I had to convert Curl Burke over to Nation's Capital, this is so much harder than what I had to do back then. And that was pretty hard. Yeah. But, this is for the kids. I'm not going to let COVID-19 define what we do as a sport. We've got to figure out a way, working with working with these jurisdictions, working with, John said, getting more than 2 per lane, because we can't make that work. Yeah, we can probably make 4 work. We don't like it, but, and not having everybody next to each other at the wall, we got to change our coaching, how we coach. But we can't let this define us. And if we got to be outdoors for longer than we normally would, then let's figure it out and get the parents to buy into it. Michael, you're in a harder spot than the rest of us, because Buffalo, is really, really cold for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can get through it and be more, Raleigh's different than Washington, D.C., but we're going to figure it out, because I'm going to be on the phone with John Roy every other day. Okay, what do I do now?
Well, and anybody who's watching this, that reach out to me. I'm helping teams in New Jersey. I've gotten calls from, all over the country, because I have done this. Obviously, it's easier to do it in Raleigh than it probably is in Aurora, or certainly than it is in Rochester. And, that I'm a Syracuse native, so I get how it was cold in May when we went to the outdoor pool. I remember that. But I'm more than willing to help and share. I shared a whole bunch of video and photos and how we did some stuff with Mike. And you go to our Team New Wave webpage, you can see us swimming in the snow, diving off the blocks. And that was, Todd mentioned Fort Collins doing it. And when I started doing it, there were videos of them swimming in the snow. I think it was Fort Collins. It was somebody in Colorado. And I said, they can do it, we can do it. And I shared those videos with my team, and, you know, and if we can do it and we can go swim in the snow, we swim when it's 26, I think, you know, there is a certain point where the wind chill is going to be cold. It can be 24 degrees out with no wind and we're fine. If it's 24 degrees out and the wind's blowing 20 miles an hour, we're not going to practice outside. You know, the person that's probably most miserable in our outdoor practices is me, because I'm the one who's there. This past year, I was training a post grad and a homeschool kid who are both trying to make a trial cut in the same events, and they could get together. So I'm there at 12:30, and I'm leaving at 7 o'clock at night. And some of those days it didn't get above 30. But like I said, I'm from Syracuse. I know how to put on a couple pair of wool socks and some boots and some long underwear and a parka. It's really hard to record test sets with gloves on. I'm just going to tell you.
John, that's actually a great segue here for the last 10 minutes of our show. I want to finish up with some health and safety considerations. So, John, you just mentioned, you know, you're still swimming sometimes when it's 24 degrees. What's too cold to swim? When that wind's blowing, is that the defining characteristic? Do you have a degree marker? How do you make that determination?
It really is. It's the wind chill. If the wind chill is going to be under 20, it starts getting a little miserable, because then, you know, your kids we've taught them to stay down low in the water when we're given sets or talking to them or anything along those lines. But the other side of it is it can be 26 degrees out and we can hop them out of an 82-degree pool for a second and dive them. And the older kids, we're not doing that with the younger kids. Younger
Sure.
Kids are staying in the warm water. They've got 10 yards to get to the wrap pavilion with heaters in it. They've got another 10 yards to the heated locker rooms when we can get back to using those. And so there's not really a significant portion of time where they have to be out in the cold. But when that wind chill's there and the wind's blowing, that makes a significant difference. If the wind's not blowing, we've done 24, 25 type degrees. Because that's often, if it's that cold here, that's often the only facility that we have access to. Our city facility's closed because it's snowed, and our high school facility's closed because it snowed. I've got the keys to the outdoor pool. Yeah, never once did I imagine that shoveling pool decks was going to be in my job description, but it's there.
And I'm glad you said that. That was going to be my question. And maybe, Todd, you can jump in on this one too. Ice on the pool deck. I mean, how are we handling that?
I'm going to buy heated rubber walkways, basically like you'd see in the mountains. And so I've been doing some research the last couple of days, and I'm going to probably have it run from where the clubhouse covered or the covered overhang ends down the half side of the pool and then down the start side. So it'll be like 50 feet and 50 feet. I've already talked to the manufacturer. He's like, yeah, you can string them together. You know, you might have to put a higher amp breaker in. And, you know, so because, yeah, that's, you know, my parents said that, you know, like, and you can't throw salt melt on the deck because It's going to be, then it's going in the pool and we're going to check, you know. So I was like, how can we do this? And I was like, no, we're going to get rubber mats that are heated. You plug them in, and actually even found an outlet that's temperature rated so that it turns on when it's 40 degrees or lower, and it turns off when it's 45 or higher. So it literally only turns on when it's cold and it's going to snow. And so then it just melts it off. And so my kids will have kind of a heated path to where they're going to get in the water. And then I've also thought I might, obviously can't do this first thing in the morning at 5 a.m., but I think I'm going to probably try and find a snowblower that somebody's getting rid of, you know, spend $200 for the team, because we get probably 4 or 5 snowstorms that we're going to get over a foot. And I'm like, God, my coaches will shovel, but I don't know how much they'll shovel. So I'll throw the snowblower there and just fire it up and snowblow the whole deck.
And Tom, as an administrator of a very large team, we always have to be considering our emergency action plans. John, maybe you have some insight here, and Tom, how does the EAP change when you're outside? There's some conditions that we have to consider that we don't normally think of when we're inside. What have you done to your EAPs, if anything, with moving outside?
I'll let John go. I mean, I think we got to think if each one of us has a different sort of climate that we've got to look at. We had a very mild winter last year where we had very little freezing rain or snow on the ground. So I've got about 30 to 45 days to figure that out. It won't get tough here. September, we might be outdoors and it could be 85 degrees at the end of September here in DC. It could also be 45. So, this month, as we've all talked, and I've made notes here from Todd and John, I'm going to think about what we do have to think about. What's our strategy if this happens? So how do we keep these kids safe? What do we do? When do we not have practice? What are those things? And try to be as fluid as we can. But certainly we got to think about emergencies and different than just going indoors and swimming. But I think having places for the athletes to get warm, after getting out, if it's cool on the deck, having the right phone numbers if we need to get a hold of somebody to get there because somebody slipped and fell on the ice, if there is ice around, but putting those things in place where we can reduce those types of things happening.
Sure. John?
I think whenever we do have snow and ice, which is obviously limited in Raleigh, North Carolina, but when we do, we might get 8 inches of snow. But it only is going to happen once or twice in any given year, and it might only be an inch. But before we go have practice, we have made sure that we have cleared parking lots, pathways, access to the pool deck so that I'm not going to deal with any other, I don't want to be responsible for somebody slipping and falling. The one thing I've found, and I don't know if it's going to be true if you get a foot of snow, Todd, but even when we've had some of our bigger snows, is that the pool deck around the edge of the pool where the pool is warm actually doesn't accumulate any snow. And so we haven't had to throw the ice melt very close to the pool, which is good. And it slopes away and our deck slopes away, but we absolutely use a ton of ice melt, all the walkways, and so that we haven't had that issue. The coaches probably are more at risk. You'll see icicles forming on the starting blocks and kids' mesh bags are freezing up at the end of the pool. And the coaches might have more of an issue, but we spend some time educating. And I'm fortunate. I've had a very consistent staff at our outdoor site over the last 8 years. And, we talk a little extra on the signs of hypothermia for the kids, especially the younger kids. Like I said, with the warmer pool, it seems to be fine. But we spend a little extra time, obviously coaches safety training covers that, but we just spend a little extra time going over that each year as it starts getting colder. We're fortunate in that facility, and that emergency service is maximum 2 minutes away. Only had to use it once and they were there in 57 seconds. So
positive thing for us, Michael, is this year, most of our private, where we practice in private schools in this area, if they thought they might get a little freezing rain or snow, they told us the night before the pool's closed. Well, now that they're going to virtual school, they're never going to be closed, right? So we could practice more often probably this fall.
Take advantage, absolutely. One of the things, guys, that we're always thinking about as coaches this day and age in USA Swimming is the MAA PP and making sure that we're following all guidelines. With training outside, we might not have parents be able to watch practice. One of the things that we've done at Victor is we've certified some of our parents as volunteer lifeguards. They go through the whole program. They're certified lifeguards. They're on deck, and they're the lifeguards for our team. So we're always going to have that pair of eyes. What are some of the considerations we need to think about with the MAA PP and how it relates to training outdoors?
I think making sure that we do not have just one coach on deck. We've got to have multiple adults on deck, and whether that's a great idea that you put in place, Mike. If we get volunteer parents, or COVID's tough because the less amount of people we have on deck. Luckily, David comes to a practice and he's looking through the fence with another good friend who's an NIH doctor, right? So they're watching the whole practice all day. So yes, I think it's just a question of everybody considering, I tell my coaches all, don't put yourself in a position where someone might think something's going on. We got to protect all of our coaches today because we never know what someone might think.
Right.
Yeah, the facility we're going to use, the parking lot actually, like literally they park and they look right at the pool. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then the locker rooms, they can't go anywhere else besides into the locker rooms and out. And even then, we're going to have limited access. The one thing I'm going to do, because our locker rooms aren't winterized, kind of like you were saying, John, they're actually Wi-Fi heaters. You know, Tom, you might want to look into this. Wi-Fi heaters on Amazon. They're like $150, and they are controlled. You can have them on an app, and that's what we're going to put on both the walls in the men's and women's locker rooms, so that we ensure that it stays heated and nothing breaks on us.
That's unbelievable. Wi-Fi heater.
That's a great idea.
Well, and you need to be aware of where all your pipes are in that building, and where they're going to be susceptible. We have certainly over the last 7 years broken some pipes when it's gone down to 12 or whatever, because those pipes would normally be shut down, drained, all that stuff for the winter.
Yep.
I've definitely had a few extra plumbing bills at our facility outdoors. And it's an older facility, and some of those pipes were, from 1963.
Do you heat wrap them? Do you heat tape them? What do you do, John?
So we figured out, and for us, there's not a lot of days where it's going to be that cold that it's going to be a problem that's going to stay below freezing for very long. I just turn on the taps everywhere. I let the water run as opposed to letting it sit there.
Okay.
I'll run. We'll put some antifreeze into now that the locker rooms are heated, we don't do this anymore. When they weren't, we put antifreeze into the toilets, and things along those lines. So I got a little off track on the question, but I kept hearing the winterized and all that.
That's super
No,
important stuff.
I think that's an important stuff, because I'm going to have to deal with that.
Back to the map, the key components are open, observable, and interruptible. We're currently operating with no parents on deck. And in a lot of ways, our outdoor facilities are a lot more open and observable. Any parent knows on our team that they have the right, if they feel something's wrong, to interrupt. And if there's something going on, they have that right to interrupt a practice. We don't ever have a situation where there's not two coaches, at least. Our outdoor facility, which I control, all of my coaches are lifeguard certified, so we don't bring in additional lifeguards. I don't see the point of having that expense, because the only thing that's going on is my swim practice.
And you're in North Carolina. They don't care about that stuff anyway.
Gentlemen, this has been a fantastic discussion. Do we have any closing thoughts?
I want to hear something from Arluck, because he's always got something good to say.
Well, I'm glad we all got together today. I learned a lot, and you provide, I hope, a lot of motivation for other teams around the country to follow your lead, be innovative, own the situation, and keep your kids swimming.
Yeah, these guys, Dave, are gonna make my job a little bit more challenging tonight, because I have about 25 show notes, and I got all the content from John that I'm gonna make available on our blog page too. So we'll get this up ASAP. It's been a great discussion. Thanks, gentlemen, for taking some time on a Friday night to join us. Everybody can find this replay on our Fitter and Faster replay page. It's a blog page right on our site that you can get to. And I look forward to doing more of these with you, gentlemen. Good luck to you this season. Have fun swimming outside. We're super excited. Dave, thanks for your time tonight. And look forward to connecting with all you soon.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Michael.
guys.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Todd.
guys.
Thanks,
Good to
John.
see
Great
y'all.
to see you.
Guys, thank you.